Well, good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Murray from Murray Natural Integrated Health here in Hastings, Nebraska. And we're starting out here today. If you are on this with me here tonight, please give me a shout out and kind of let me know if you are hearing me, as if I see somebody kind of log on. If you can at least say, if anybody if you can actually hear me, if you can kind of maybe put a quick comment in there. I had to quick last minute here kind of switch off and change off with my mic and everything. So if anybody could give me a quick message just to let me know that you hear me, that would be great. But here we are. Greetings. I am a certified medical examiner, as well as a naturopathic physician, as well as a certified board certified chiropractic physician. And in our office here, we do a lot of different things. We are a comprehensive natural health primary care office where we do lots of lab work, lots of nutrition, lots of also supplementation. We do hyperbaric therapy. We do EKGs and spirometry. I also teach a lot of continuing education classes to providers across the country, and teaching medical examiners and how to do medical exams. And so we do a lot of those things. So today, though, we are talking about toxicity, toxic burden, toxic overload, and its effect on metabolism, its effect on weight, its effect on you. So this is the reason why I do what I do, and is the reason why we have also checked, when you talk about toxic issues, we have checked at our house, tested our water, make sure there isn't too excessive a burden of toxic burden in our water. Also, why we do some filtration in our house, and it is important. Why is it important? Well, this is the reason: family, right? It's important that you and I be the parents, so to speak, and take care and take care of our family as best we can. And if you take care of your own health, well, you're obviously better able to take care of all your family as well. So it's an important thing an important topic, because we know we have a more toxic world just in general. So let's go ahead and move on. This is our first part one of our toxic burden series, where I know we're going to have at least one more, because we have a lot of information to get through. So we're trying to get through all the slides here today. But if we can't, we'll just roll them over into the next session, next Thursday. But here's some toxic stats just to kind of set the tone, so we all have an understanding of what we're talking about here. There's over 2 million poison exposures reported back in 2000. That number has continued to increase, actually. There's more and more chemicals actually produced every year that are licensed as new chemicals. So it's an important thing to realize. Medications, the Journal of American Medical Association, they recognize that over 100,000 prescription deaths happen each year. And many other authorities, British Medical Journal, actually suggest even higher than that. Actually, around 16,000 deaths that occur from non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which include like medications like ibuprofen and Aleve, just from that one class of medications. So we know that medications actually have a degree of toxicity. So not today. Next time we're going to talk about medications, because that's an important one. Some medications that actually increase the likelihood of having certain neurodegenerative conditions, such as Alzheimer's, and certain medications that increase your likelihood of having a heart attack or a stroke as well. So it's important information. It's important. Some medications, we know, also medications can cause vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And if we look at all over the place, you look in the news, you're going to find articles just like this. Just in our local Grand Island, our power plant here in Grand Island, we're in central Nebraska here at Hastings, Nebraska, but Grand Island has had multiple articles talking about how much mercury their one coal burning plant emits into the atmosphere. And if you live around a coal burning plant, it's quite likely you may not have the good scrubbers on your particular plant there. And most certainly that's a source of mercury. Microplastics found in the brain. Nature Medicine, that's one that's just come out here recently, and that's another one we will talk about here next time we have our live stream. Children are routinely tested for lead levels in certain areas. So we know that lead is still an issue. It's not as much as now as it used to be, but still lead is an issue. 1 in 4 New York City adults have elevated mercury levels. In fact, in New York City, it is not recommended that a pregnant woman consume more than a fish or 2 a week because of the mercury toxicity that's inherent in those places in the fish there. Prescription drugs are being found in the drinking water across the United States, and even things that you would think of are food, such as soda. You would think that these are related to weaker bones, also related to stroke. There's all kinds of the things that we're consuming that we call food aren't really food. What are we doing? What are we doing? I mean, really, it's kind of crazy. Since we are talking specifically about heavy metals toxicity today, if you look at some recent studies on mercury exposure and its effect on reproductive health, we know that mercury and different heavy metals have an influence on hormones and on infertility. And we also know that there are a lot of people who have exposure to mercury, well, every single day. Of course, we have coal burning, but also mercury amalgam fillings. So there's a lot of exposures that people do get on a regular basis to mercury. So this particular study here, in conclusion, it showed that increased levels of mercury were associated with infertility, and in males also had effect on semen quality as well. It caused DNA damage, etc. And so it's just an obvious point here that we have a definitive studies that are out there showing us that our environment, we have lots of toxic exposures. So this is one question I always have, when you got prescription drugs in the water and you got, 2 million poison exposures all this time, you got mercury in the air and you got mercury also coming from silver amalgam fillings, all these things. Why isn't anybody testing for these things? Why isn't that part of any kind of routine test on a regular basis when people have symptoms? Because we know the heavy metals can have an effect on fertility and most certainly on cognitive function. Now, in our young folks, lead sometimes is tested in certain areas. But besides that, nobody's testing for these things. Nobody's testing for it. And we know it has a significant impact on health. We know that we live in a plastic-filled, metal-ridden, chemical water-laden society. That's true. And that's why filtration is a good idea for lots of households. We know there's heavy metals in the environment. We talked about coal burning being one of those sources. Smoking. Well, obviously, there's a lot of people do smoke. And if you're a smoker, I almost guarantee you, if we did a test today, we would find that you would have probably high arsenic in your body, including some others. Poor water sources. And even when the government, because this is a funny thing, in Grand Isle in particular, for many years, it was well known that uranium is high in the water sources around here. And Grand Isle, they knew that. Hastings knew that. The areas around here know that. If you're around the aquifer, we'll talk about that in a moment. But if you're around the Ogallala aquifer, around anywhere in this region, it's very likely that you have high uranium that's in your water source. But one of the comments from one of the individuals from Grand Isle, and one of the people who were in charge at the time, said, well, yeah, we know it's high, but we can't really guarantee that it's at a level that's going to harm anybody. So anyway, so it's kind of funny, but not funny, because they're the ones who are here to help, right? They're the ones that are here to help reduce your burden, your exposure, and try to protect you. Food choices, all the processed foods. I mean, come on. We know that the things that we're consuming, we know that a Dorito isn't really food, all right? Or a soda isn't really food. And yet we are paying for that, for millions of people to consume that and consume it for free. We're paying that. You and I are paying for that. Is it any wonder that the National Academy of Sciences has come out here and has said in the past that around 90% of all cancers are caused by carcinogenic substances? That the things that you and I consume and things that we take in, 90% of cancers, you can look at different studies, might say 80, some might say 70, but a large percentage of the things we take in are carcinogenic. are cancerous. And the things you take in most of the time is what? Most of the time, hopefully you do. Air and what else? Water. Those two are pretty important. So, and again, hardly anybody is testing for those things. Not to test is to guess, to test is to know. And if you are going to rely on your government to take care of you, testing you into making sure those things are the way they should be, you got another thing coming. You and I need to be the parent. You and I need to be the one who are taking care of at least our family, right? That's what you can have control over is your family. You can't control over everybody else, but you want to take care of the people who you love, right? So it's important for us to understand that. So here's another slide. Let's see, I'm going to move this forward to, okay, so this is a good point. Smoking. Now, this patient came in, this individual is tired, they're wore out. This is a truck driver, and a gentleman came in, and I always say this is a kind of joke, it's funny, but it's true. There's true this. But guys come in for three reasons. Guys come in because they've lost their male function, because they're in pain, or because their wife made them come in. And that's exactly what happened here. His wife, who cares about him, brought him in. And so we did some testing. We found out here, if you look at this test, you will find that this individual's red blood cell counts are high. There's lots of things wrong with this. He's got some inflammation. The C-reactive protein is an inflammatory marker, but his red blood cell count, his hemoglobin, his hematocrit, those are high. Now, what often happens, it's a good point to make, is that if you're dehydrated, take the water out of your system, it will appear like your red blood cells are getting higher and concentrated. It's just because the blood is getting more concentrated because there's no more water in there. But if you're a smoker, your body will change. You'll actually send a hormone, erythropoietin, to your bone and say, bone, start making me more red blood cells. Make me more red blood cells so I can transfer oxygen more effectively. And that's exactly what happened in this case. This individual was making more red blood cells, and that's why, because this person was hypoxic. Why were they hypoxic? Well, it's pretty obvious, because we tested their carbon monoxide and found that they had carbon monoxide poisoning. Where did they get carbon monoxide poisoning from? From smoking, right? I mean, no duh, it does make sense. Anybody who's smoking half a pack or more a day is most likely going to have some level of carbon monoxide poisoning. Their brain is being poisoned by a gas, and it's harming their brain. And so that can affect, make somebody have some cognitive memory issues, those kind of things too. But the other chemicals that are in it, of course, contain heavy metals. 100% can contain heavy metals. And so if you look at this particular test with this individual, we actually did a hair-related test. Now, this hair-related test, as you can see, and I'll talk about testing here, I think, in just a second, but there's lots of ways you can test heavy metals. This particular test has some antimony in it, also has some titanium, has some other things. This person right here isn't a smoker, but you can test arsenic, you can test cadmium, you can test mercury, you can test uranium. In Nebraska, we have lots of uranium. And so it's very easy to test these things. With the smoker I'm talking about, he definitely had arsenic elevated in his hair. Well, I mean, what you want to do is you want to address the common sources of exposure is what you want to do. But this individual, they've got carbon monoxide poisoning. They also have toxic exposures, and they have high arsenic in their body, and they need to get rid of it. Yes. You can take things to help to rid that from your body, but it's kind of hard to get rid of a poison when you're taking in a poison all the time. So it's important to realize that, right? That you can take something to bring your level up. Like you can take vitamin D to bring your vitamin D level up, but you can't take vitamin D to get rid of alcohol that you drink all the time or something, right? You have to address the tough thing. You have to address the thing that is not good for you. Regarding that slide I just showed you, you can test for heavy metals. You can test for it in the blood. The Cleveland Clinic, if you go and look at their website, the Cleveland Clinic, they mention 4 kind of avenues that you can test for heavy metals. You can test a person's blood. So the blood is usually tested for acute toxicity. That might be mercury. So if you're somebody that just got exposed to mercury at a mercury thermometer, if they even have them around anymore, and you drank some of that mercury down, that would be the test to do. But a lot of people, you will rid and get mercury and cadmium and lead and uranium and all these things out of your bloodstream as quick as you can, because your body knows that those things are deleterious. They're horrible for your entire body and for your brain. And so you will try to get rid of them quickly and get them out of the bloodstream, because if they're in the bloodstream, they can hurt your brain. They can hurt the number one. So what your body slowly does, it pushes it away into other tissue, and you end up starting to slowly get rid of it over a period of time. And you can get rid of it, find it being excreted through your urine, also through your hair, and also through your fingernails. So that's why the Cleveland Clinic, they also mentioned those 4 avenues right there. Hair is about a 3-month exposure window that you can kind of see what is coming out. We also do drug testing here, and we do the same thing, drug testing for hair. You can actually see what drugs are in the hair over a 3-month period of time. But urine is another good test to do as well. Okay, let me bring up my slide here again. Trace arsenic in the water may be linked to diabetes. We know that heavy metals, including arsenic and others, are toxic and can have an effect on your pancreas, on your brain, on your liver, on your entire body. It only makes sense. We want to have clean sources. And where do we think we're getting some of this arsenic from? It's from a lot of burning type sources, right? Coal tar, coal, different electric facilities, including also smoking, any of those things. You're probably going to get arsenic from some of those sources. This is one, like I said, this is an old study here, an old article. And actually, even a few years after this, they were still having problems trying to get the proper scrubbers in there. It's a very expensive process to remove mercury from these areas, but we know that mercury is not good for anybody and does have a significant impact on our health. Endocrine disruptors in water and their effects on the reproductive system. So in this particular article, it's talking about, we know the chemicals that we take in from farming, from cattle practice, etc. Some of these are endocrine disruptors, or they mess with your hormones' ability to bind properly. And they might have look-alike type properties like estrogen, like testosterone, and they might also facilitate growth patterns in some people, actually facilitate cancers. Of these samples taken here, 12 states had elevated hormone levels detected in tap water. Chemicals and hormones in the water have known to have measurable effect on gonadal growth. And so it can also increase in cancer proliferation. That's well known as a possibility there. There's an article from Hastings, Nebraska, and Hastings Utilities, in an article they talk about nitrates. Nitrates are very prevalent in farming communities. It's used as part of the agricultural experience, right? And so that's something you can easily test for nitrates in your water. You can do an at-home test. I'm going to show you an example of that here in just a short bit. But that's an easy one to test for. The metals are sometimes a little bit more difficult, but even in small little rural Hastings, Nebraska here, we can have problems with nitrates in our system, in our water systems here. But I told you about uranium. Uranium is naturally occurring in the ground. And so in Nebraska, we can find uranium very easily in the hair of patients that come in, because we test that routinely. If you're a patient, you're from the Hastings area in Nebraska, not just Nebraska, but anywhere where the aquifer is, and that could go all the way down to Texas, you're going to probably find some people with some elevated uranium. But why is it high if it's naturally occurring? Is it just because it's naturally occurring? Not just because of that. There's also an issue because when you use nitrate fertilizers, that tends to liberate some of the naturally occurring uranium from the ground. It's kind of a problem with that as well. And so that's why you can test quite routinely wells in Nebraska here and find that uranium levels are higher than they should be. And of course, that's what that's going to translate into is, of course, you can have some high levels in your hair then, and then that might impact your thyroid. It might affect other organs, including your liver, your kidneys. those things or those organs, they are designed to filter out and get rid of that. So this individual, we did hair test. They had high uranium. They went home. They had their water tested, and they were at 70. The EPA levels at 30. So they were elevated. Okay, so what do you do about these things? Well, first you can test your water, right? You can certainly do that. You can test your water. There's a lot of at-home kind of test strips you can use, and I'll show you that here in a second. You can also have your water tested at an actual facility when it's talking about like heavy metals, etc. That's probably you're going to want to send that in and have that tested. I'll show you an example of one of those companies too. You can send in a sample to them and they can test it. You can test for arsenic in your water. They can test for uranium. And you don't necessarily have to test for everything under the sun. It's just almost everybody should probably, the first thing to consider is you should have some kind of filtration on your water. At least have some type of carbon filter. Nope, your carbon filters will not usually remove all the nitrates. Depends how good of a system you have. And I'm not going to talk to that issue right now. We know that mercury or that distillation, including RO, both those will remove nitrates, and both those will remove most heavy metals, including uranium. You want to have clean water, but you can't have that tested. Your carbon filters, like your Pure and Brita filters, they may or may not do everything you want them to do, but that is at least a good option to start out with. At least you got to make sure you're keeping those filters clean, even your carbon ones, because eventually they don't work like they should, because they start to lose their filtering capacity. So some at-home options that you may wish to consider. This is just a simple one. You can actually get something like this around a $20 to $30 kind of option from even Menards and different places like that. It doesn't cost a whole lot. So I have used similar type reagent strips for nitrates in our water system at our house, pre and post filter. It's always kind of nice to see that. So you can actually try that. If you're using some type of a carbon filter system at home and it says all this claim to fame, says, oh yeah, it filters all these impurities out. Well, hey, why don't you get a little bit of a test kit and try that out? These are not that expensive. The litmus test type tests, those are not that expensive. Also, you can contact a company, Servitech here in our area, and there's lots of water testing facilities that you can go ahead and call them up and say, hey, I'd like to have my water tested, and send that into them. And you can figure out whether or not you are actually needing to have reverse osmosis, or if you're needing to have also distilled water, any other kind of an increased purification option, intensity purification option. So this is a urine test that we did. So we did a urine test. You can see in this individual, we did two things. We did a pre-test with this individual, and we tested for a variety of toxic elements. You can see that uranium is high that's on the top, the pre-provocative challenge. With this individual, we also used a chelator. So we gave them a chelator on the day before, the same day they did the second test. So we were wanting to see pre and post and see if the chelator would actually bring out some more toxic substances. Chelators are meant to ionically bond to different heavy metals and different substances and make them water soluble so that you can urinate them out. So in this case, we did use a chelator and did the provocative challenge, and saw that, of course, something more came out. Lead, mercury, they came out a whole lot more so with the chelator. Well, if you do have somebody that has more toxic elements coming out from a chelator, well, that's a good reason to use that as a substance to chelate, because that can be therapeutic to help remove that from that individual. Okay, let's see. On to the next slide here. So we've talked about toxic overload from heavy metals, about testing options, some of those things. Now let's talk a little bit about sugar and also processed foods. Before we kind of tune this out, there's a lot of interesting information here. We are just going to scratch the surface today. We have more information to talk about next time as well. We try to make these around 30 to 40 minutes, so I want to be respectful of your time. But we know that sugar consumption in our country is horribly, well, it's way too high, right? We all know that. Sugar can, according to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, it can suppress the immune system. It can upset mineral imbalances in the body and cause certain depletions when we have it in excess. Sugar can also cause depression. It can alter the ability to think clearly and cause headaches and migraines. I have lots of patients who have problems with migraines, and they correlate that directly back to how much sugar they're consuming. And it also can be inflammatory. If you look back at this slide here, looking at the relative increase in diabetes in children and adolescents from 2001 to 2017, a huge increase, not of just type 2 diabetes. For many years, you've heard, well, no longer can you have adolescents and children. You can no longer call type 2 diabetes adult onset diabetes because you have all these adolescents, all these young people are starting to get it. And that's what we're seeing here in this particular slide from the Journal of American Medical Association is you have a dramatic increase in type 2 diabetes, but not just in type 2, also in type 1. And type 1 diabetes increased amounts. And this goes concurrently with the amount of sugar consumption, processed foods that we eat and consume as a nation. So this is an interesting little cartoon, a little something I made about a little conversation between father and son. And the son says, well, Dad, what are you doing? And Dad says, well, I was just reading the ingredients label in this breakfast food. Sodium ascorbate, yellow number 5, maltodextrin, monosodium glutamate. And the son says, but Dad, shouldn't be food one of the ingredients? Well, of course it should. That's the problem, is that when you look at the ingredients list on what you are consuming today, and if it has a lot of those things in there that you can't read, then it's not food. It's just not. And we have to understand that this is not simply just a matter of, oh, you're just eating too much sugar and it's just bad for you. Multiple organizations conclude that poor glucose control and an abundance of sugar in our diet all the time most certainly does have an impact on our hormone problems. Chronic high glucose control, high blood glucose is behind many sexual problems people face at the first line of action is to improve glucose control. This is part of the American Diabetic Association, directly from their website. I mean, this isn't like ultra kind of natural health kind of a website here. Even they're saying this. It's 100%. It's not just an apple day keeps the doctor away kind of message here. If you are consuming the processed foods and have a lot of the sugars in our diet like that, it is going to will affect your hormone status. And we have slides to show that here in just a second, just like this one. So this male patient is diabetic, and they came in because they had male problems. And so we did some testing, found out their testosterone was low, their estrogen was high. Almost always when guys have low testosterone and they have a little weight on them, they almost always have high estrogen. So their A1C was low, or was high rather, it was an 8.3. So they're definitely in diabetic ranges. And they had some inflammatory markers and their vitamin D was low. So what we did, we just changed their diet, dealt with some foods that they shouldn't be eating, took away gluten in their case, also dealt with their vitamin D deficiency. And they came back a few months later and their blood sugar numbers had improved and their testosterone came up around 100 points. And you know what also happened? Their function improved. And we didn't actually give them any testosterone. Their testosterone came up 100 points. You know, I have not once, since I have been working, not once have I seen if a gentleman, if they're working on their issues and we see that they've lost a little bit of weight and their blood sugars come down, I've always seen testosterone levels elevate around 100 points with no testosterone whatsoever. So a lot of good things you can say about that. But when you have high sugar and high insulin status, you are going to have problems. Study links diet soda to higher risk of stroke. Just like I said, this is published in the Journal of Stroke. Diet soda. Okay, wait a minute. You just said high sugar. Now you're talking about diet soda. Yeah, because diet soda is cancerous. Diet soda is not good for you. Diet soda is not food. It's not. You're talking about a chemical in there, which is is neurostimulating, and a chemical in there, which has been, again, right here, another in the journal of Stroke, talking about that this particular beverage, this included a high risk of ischemic stroke, where blood vessels in the brain become obstructed, and Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and the most common form of dementia. So it's a very provocative thing when you start telling people, hey, you need to cut out your soda, and they start going right over to diet soda. Nobody's deficient in diet soda. They aren't, and it can cause some severe problems with folks. And here's another one: diet soda linked to increased risk of stroke in women. This is the American Heart Association. 81,000 postmenopausal women. That's a big study, folks. And they came out to say that 23% were more likely to have a stroke, 31% more likely to have a clotted cause ischemic stroke. It's more of the same and the same and the same information that we cannot expect. We cannot expect that in a body made by God, that if we eat something other than what's made by God, like soda, like diet soda, like all these refined sugars, like all these processed foods, we can't expect it to work properly. And that's why we have to realize that in a body made by God, we should try to be eating foods made by God and not foods made by man, and eaten in their most natural state. It's important. It's important. It's important. One more patient, then we're going to conclude for the night. So here is another super cool case study here. This individual, they came in and they had joint pain, they had neck pain. And so we did some lab work, and they were thinking they just need an adjustment. Like they just need like a chiropractic adjustment. But I just knew there's something wrong. So we did lab work. And sure enough, their C-reactive protein was high, their SED rate was high, their rheumatoid factor was high. Their body is attacking their joints. Their body is attacking their neck. They have rheumatoid arthritis, and they're attacking these structures. So in this case, what did we do? Well, we had them cut out all their sugars. We had them cut out gluten. They were also vitamin D deficient. And their testosterone was low as well. It wasn't clinically low, but it was low. And they came back. Their pain improved. They were no longer needing their ibuprofen. And look what happened to their C-reactive protein. It went from an 18 down to a 6, from a 48 on their SED rate down to a 25. They had less inflammation, no medications at this point, also no testosterone. Their testosterone came up around 100 points. Just so much that we can get, from just giving our body what it needs and taking away what it doesn't need. So what can you do? What can you do? Well, first, you can control the things that you can control, right? So you can not eat the junky stuff. You can cut out all the excessive carbs and the sodas and those things. Obviously, you can not smoke and not drink alcohol. Obviously, you can do those things. Some are tougher for some people than others. No judgment here. But you can do some filtering of the water in your house. You can also do some testing. You can do an at-home test. You can also read your labels, right? We can all read labels and try to actually get back to more food and limit those non-food items, get back to that foods by God kind of principle. And you can also drop down and stop eating past 6 o'clock, right? Because it's the 6 o'clock and after kind of eating that lots of people start doing, and that starts to drive up sugar, drive up insulin levels. It's getting in that intermittent fasting kind of perspective. And we talked about that on our last live stream. But you can also get tested. Why aren't they testing for any of these things? Nobody's testing for these toxicity things. And so you can test for it. Not to test is to guess, to test is to know. Next week, we're going to talk about parabens and microplastics in the brain and tips on plastics, on how to identify what plastics are bad ones, the anticholinergics and these different medications that can cause Alzheimer's disease, and case studies on super cool case study on a patient who had phenomenal results by just doing what? By giving their body what it needs and taking away what it doesn't need. Folks, we have so much information on our YouTube page and on Facebook. Please, please, please like and subscribe our page. Share this with your friends. There's a lot of information on here. I know that your other family members, they should be hearing this. Your kids should be hearing this. We should be hearing this. I know some of you heard this already, and it's like you hear it and you're like, well, I needed to hear that again. I need to hear it again sometimes. Why? Because we live in a world that has so much junk in it. It's hard to be in the world, not of it. but we have a body that's designed by God to heal and repair and self-regulate. So start doing some things for yourself today. Start doing some things today for your family. Start doing some things for your health, for your God. Do that for today. And you're going to find that your body is able to do some pretty wonderful and awesome things. So like and subscribe. I'm going to take off here. So Murray Natural Integrated Health, setting the standard in natural healthcare. Have a blessed rest of your day.